Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to First Person Mapper. Myself and Cat Food are bringing it to you live here with the makers of Anubis. We got jd40, we got Roald, and we got Yakuza. Those are in order, descending order on your right. Check them out. Some of them are here with us to talk about Anubis and Cat Food. You know, he's the real mapper here as far as the two hosts are concerned. Him and I have done a little bit of content together, but I'm just some guy who yells into a microphone while running around custom maps. He's the guy who actually makes those custom maps so that I can run around in them and yell. So big hats off to him. I'm sure he'll have some interesting some questions here. I've got a couple prepared as well. Meanwhile, we do have, of course, in the top, jd40. He was the environment artist, the lighter, the texturer. He did some signs. He did some stuff over here. Give it up for him. He's flying around the map. And he is, of course, also responsible for Biome. Certainly a couple of other maps as well, but Biome was already added into the game before Anubis, so you may be familiar with his work from there. Aside from that, we do have Roald. He's responsible most recently for Paro alongside Yakuza, actually. And that is for a wingman contest that happened, but obviously Roald himself is responsible for the layout, the levels. And so he's down there below jd40 on the overlay. And then at the bottom right, we have Yakuza himself, responsible for a lot of the art that you're seeing, a lot of the 2D and 3D art that you're seeing for this map. And of course, everybody else did a little bit of something. I'm sure there's going to be some details where somebody will say, hey, actually, I did that part of the layout. Hey, actually, I did that prop. But for the wide variety, that's essentially what we got here. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, mappers, one and all. And yeah. Cat Food, since you are, of course, our mapper, I was curious if you had any particular questions for Roald about the layout of the map, because obviously you've done a lot of layouts yourself. So I wanted to throw it to you to give us our first introductory question here.
Yeah, sure. Can you tell me how much of us, how much the layout changed when the other guys started adding like the visuals? How did the connection go between like the level design and environment art? A lot of times that's like basically the hardest part of working with between level designers and actual artists, like the environment artists.
Yeah, I can tell something about that. So I've been like through 15 playtests or so, and I spent like 3 months just grayboxing, just testing, just iterating on the map. And at some point, Jakuza joined me. He made some props, and it was pretty much when the layout was pretty much done, I started to add in some props and stuff like that. And I think when jd40 joined for dressing up the map, we did like maybe 2 more iterations. Of course, we changed some on the B side. The bed's not different, the main entrance, and also when he dressing the map, putting in some art, some geometry, just changes with that in a good positive way in our cooperation. So yeah.
Can you point us? Can you show us some things that changed?
Sure.
Like, what are like the biggest changes? Or you said bomb side B, or?
Yeah, especially on B side, there is some changes to it. It's mostly a lot less grand. So jd40 not just made it look pretty, but he also made sure there's a bit more space to walk around, and it all feels a bit less cramped. There's like little details like pillars and blocks
Right.
you could play around, and basically when he has some idea in his mind, he just send it to me, and we just talk about it. And I look at it from a level design perspective, and when it feels right for me, I just say like, let's go ahead and just test on mapcore or whatever, and see how.
Yeah. No, great. Well, are you not talking about like after it was added to the game? Because just when it was added to the game, there was like this entrance to B was like a lot more narrow. And this was the point that you opened it up, or because I know you opened it up. Was like beforehand. Did you open it up already, or was it even more narrow beforehand?
Well, before we changed the main entrance, there were a lot of other differences to the map. So the new entrance to B was basically a change we did after it was in the game. I mean, like as a level designer, you always think on how to improve stuff. You're never happy with what you create. You always want to improve it. So,
of course,
it was a point where we changed the entrance. But before that, there was like a cramped window here, so he made it into a connector. I don't think this space here existed, or maybe smaller, so it was a bit enlarged and stuff like that. Like overall, it was a bit blocky, and he just made areas look interesting, like this little stair you could hide and get an off angle, and there's all kind of small changes to the map in general, which the art fixed, like made it more interesting. Really, yeah.
Now, you've brought us over to the mid doors here, and one of the things that I remember seeing in an update is that the Onks actually showed up, whereas before I think they were copied over from Dust 2 with a little bit less of a change. So, who was responsible for this one? Was this Yakuza or was this JD40 for the Onks?
No, that was one of mine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think the doors were probably the one thing that we got the most feedback on because everyone knew that they were from Dust 2, so it was really late in the process, and I just decided I would put some extra time into them because, you know, we wanted to give the whole map a sort of unique flavor, and those are the last remaining holdout, I guess, from like a lot of the Dust 2 stuff that we had just used as a placeholder in the beginning.
One of the things that I remember seeing in general when this map was added was that people were just sort of lumping it in actually with like Dust 2 and Mirage, saying, oh yeah, this is just another sand map or another, you know, whatever Middle Eastern map, that sort of region, right? So what did you guys essentially try to do? Obviously, now for the most part, I think people can see it's actually very different in terms of the tone, in terms of the colors even that you're using, the color combinations, so the palette of the map. So what did you guys do as far as the lighting goes? And I'll take this to either JD40 or Yakuza, either one of you guys. How did you guys approach trying to take a sort of setting that is in the Middle East that obviously, I mean, a little bit more towards Africa with Egypt, but how did you guys sort of handle carving out a unique palette, a unique art style, if you can call it that, for your map specifically?
Well, I can answer that, I guess. So we had a lot of references from like Egyptian temples and stuff like that. So one of those temples was the Temple of Philae, and if you spectate me, these huge towers, they're from that temple. And I can't say about the colors because Yakuza came up with those, the orange and the blue. That was his idea.
I also think, like, especially like adding the water also to CT spawn, that really separates makes it like have it like its own identity. As long as with the high pillars, stuff like this. How do you call them? The obelisk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have these in Mirage or in Dust, right?
Yeah.
That was
that really helps.
Yeah.
That
was all JD.
All right, good job,
really
man.
amazing.
Thanks.
So when you guys were coming up with sort of like the props themselves, or some of the 3D architecture, if you will, so that the actual angles and the way that the map is laid out in a way that the art sort of gives shape to the layout itself. How did you guys go about approaching it to essentially, like, one of the things I noticed with earlier drafts of maps is that they feel very boxy, and so like sometimes corners need to get like rounded or have jagged edges sticking out to feel a little bit more natural in terms of how we interpret other maps. Whereas if you look to like gray boxes, obviously they're notorious for just being a series of boxes essentially. So how did you guys go about like essentially giving the map its current shape and the way that you guys have settled on it? Was there anything in particular that you sort of process that you guys used to figure that out?
Well, I think we should go back to the starting of this whole map, because at the beginning I started this map on my own, and I'm not the artist, so for me doing the art was like a huge bump I was looking up against, and I could not find someone to work with me at that point. And so what I did is I already decided certain areas in the map, like A side was supposed to be like a aqua kind of area, like an old pool and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a fountain in there in an earlier draft I saw.
Yeah, exactly. And well, I had other plans for T-spawn. It was supposed to be a big dock, but now it became a little river. And I was planning to do a residential area and like a temple. And basically, from the start on the gray box, I already put my ideas in there, and I think some of the gray box is pretty recognizable. But then when jd40 joined us, he put his own little magic on it and gave some pretty good direction to the art, and I think he could probably talk more about that.
One thing I want to add there is really early on, I made some prototypes for a couple of the shapes that are really prevalent right now, like some of these trims and the bricks, definitely. Those were like really early on, and I think getting those to JD was essential because he just started like doing totally unexpected things with them, and because we already had prototypes for those so early on, when I came up with the final art for those, it just kind of came together much more fluently, I think, than had we like made a prototype or something and then much later on come back with the final shape and then have to somehow integrate that into the map. So having smaller shapes, I think, was a good thing and a bad thing. I mean, it had some disadvantages at the end, but
yeah, we did fix those. You did make that auto combine thing, so right. it's all good now. Yeah, that these assets, the trims are awesome. I pretty much made everything with them. So you see, like these trims, this is the same prop as like up here. That's also the same one, and this is the same one. This is the same one. It's here. It's here. It's basically everywhere. Like even here down in the canal, this is also the same prop. Yeah, this one was really good. I liked it.
So how did you guys overcome the limitations, and what were the limitations themselves of essentially building the map out of much smaller pieces than we might normally see? Because obviously Jakuza alluded to some issues that you had before. Was it performance or was it something else?
Yeah, it was actually an article that Radix and Morozov or Untor, I don't know exactly what he is on MapCore, but they had done some research into using auto combine, which would take smaller props and combine them together, basically to reduce draw calls, which apparently is like a special problem that Source deals with much more than modern engines.
Yeah, have you guys also looked into? I'm not sure. Do you guys use 3D Max or?
No, I used only Blender.
Only Blender. Okay. See, because for 3D Max, you have like the Wallworm plugin. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. Where you can like import like a big part of your map, and then export it as one model, which is great.
That would have been great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know there's some add-ons for Blender that I could have used. I still need to figure out how to use them, but yeah, for now I'm just doing the good old single object.
Whatever works in the end, of course. You got it to work, but.
Yeah, I mean, after a lot of headaches, I'm sure Wallworm would have streamlined things a lot, but oh well.
Yeah, I think everyone that like made levels for CSGO has had headaches with limitations limitations. Yeah,
definitely.
I actually want to ask about that a little bit more in depth anyway, because obviously none of you guys started out with Anubis. This was not anybody's first rodeo, so to speak. So you guys have already been experienced mappers up until the point where you're creating this. So I'll just ask you first, Roald, since you obviously were responsible for a lot of the layout here. What do you think best prepared you for some of the sort of challenges that you faced with this map's development? What do you think gave you essentially like helped you build up to where you are now? Was there a specific project, a specific map that you had worked on previous to this that gave you inspiration for this map, or is there anything like that really allowed you to essentially facilitated the development of it? It gave you what experience you needed to make the map that you see here today?
Honestly, I think like any previous experience helped to the point where you're at today. Like there's a lot of fail experiences, like maps that aren't that great, but like each new map is just being so much better, and you learn a lot from them. So I think any map did really. But I also worked on a community mod named Pirates, Vikings, and Knights 2 as a volunteer level designer, and I worked on an Egyptian map there. And
so you also work with what's his name? Colonel?
Yeah,
yeah, he's a nice guy. Yeah, I also sometimes speak to him.
So it's built in the Half-Life version, so it's like even more limited in the sense of performance, and so optimization was a big thing in that map, and I learned how to close up areas to increase performance like early on in Greybox. So from that experience, you already keep a layout in Greybox in mind where you are sure you're able to optimize stuff and close areas off, like not having too many open areas and stuff like that, since it's just really limited.
When it comes to the art and actually assembling the art and putting it all together, all those bricks that Yakuza put together, I wanted to ask you, jd40, if you had sort of come up with any sort of strategy to assemble the map based on your past experience with working with this engine that we're seeing now, anything that sort of shaped how you approached it, because it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like what Yakuza prepared you with in terms of assets was a bit different than your normal workflow. So was there something specific that prepared you for using it in this way that still would allow it to work within the source engine?
Well, not really. I didn't have any different approach to this than my usual maps, but I already started this map knowing that we're gonna have some sort of auto combine later on, so it was kind of more free to use more bricks and stuff, because I knew later on they would all be combined into one prop, so I didn't have to worry that much.
Is this something that you've ended up using in your later works as well? Like, obviously you put together Ravine, which is a Wingman map, recently. I'm not sure if you used this sort of similar strategy in that map.
No, that was a smaller map, so I didn't really have to worry about draw calls that much.
Okay, cool.
Also, like since it's still like visually kind of similar to Dust and Mirage, there's still like a lot of custom props, right? Basically all of them, or
Yeah,
what kind of stock props did you guys use?
There were, well, yeah, actually the Dust 2 props that we started out with, most of them got reskinned later on in the process. So,
right.
There's still a few windows that are like windows and doors that are.
Yeah, I think I recognize these signs as well, or no?
Yeah. So the signs also got, I believe.
Oh, it's quite different. Yeah.
And those two signs reskinned.
But still a lot of work in the custom work as well for this level, like in the texturing and everything.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that really adds up to the coolness of a level. Because like a lot of players, if they see a custom level that doesn't use a lot of custom content, they can still be kind of impressed, right? Of course, it can be like a pretty level with a lot of stock models. But for me, like a level really stands out if it uses it's basically total overhaul of anything you've seen in the game yet. So I think that's really cool as well.
Yeah, I think when you use custom textures like this, you get a more cohesive and more believable team. Like all the textures are basically the same color grade, but they just got different kind of texture on it. Like some got brick, some's got plaster or whatever. So I think it's really needed to make a map stand out and make it like a believable place to let it make sense, if you get me.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think if you look at the way that the sort of upper echelon of custom maps that we've seen, and even the ones that are Valve official as well, they always have something completely different about them visually that they bring to the table. And so even though you guys went with a theme that some people would have likened to Dust 2 or Mirage, a lot of the fact that you're sort of taking your own spin on it and you're putting your own theme on it with all of the custom assets, I think went a long way. And actually, to that point, I wanted to ask, once you guys won the MapCore contest, I don't think it was that long between winning that MapCore Exotic Places contest back in, I believe it was 2019, and then when that was announced that you guys had won, it wasn't that long away from when Valve decided to add it to the map pool itself. So I wanted to ask a little bit about like the sort of backstory or what was going on behind the scenes when you guys had done it, because just winning the contest is in and of itself a pretty big accomplishment. So any interesting stories you guys have to share from like when that was announced, and then obviously when Valve decided to add it? I don't know how much advance warning they gave before they dropped it in. I'm sure they had some communication with you guys, but just if you can remember back to those days, any interesting stories? Anybody want to take the lead on this one for talking about like celebrations or anything that you guys did?
I think I was mostly out of the loop on that one, so I'm gonna leave it to you two.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know I saw the message and just went in our Discord and like, hey, we won the first prize. So I was super happy. But yeah, I don't know. It's like at some point we got the message from Valve on the workshop, like we want to get your email and contact you. And as I am the workshop owner, I get the message first. So
Right.
I was getting that message and just had to share it right away. And it was just like an unreal moment, so to call.
JD, you've had a map added to the game officially before. Was this was it almost business as usual for you, or was it still a little surreal to be involved in a map that got added to the game again?
I mean, I guess it was business as usual. But of course, I'm very happy that this one got added and that people play it and like it. And yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of positive feedback in the beginning, right? Right away. It was also really cool. Yeah, it's also really cool. Oh, sorry?
It started off in scrimmage, but they very fast changed it to matchmaking.
Yeah, that's a good sign for sure.
Yeah. I mean, when the map got added initially, it was still kind of rough. The clipping was quite bad, so we had to fix a lot of stuff. But right now, it's pretty good, I think.
Yeah, so it's available now for people to try. They don't have to go to any workshop link. They don't have to boot up their Steam client. Just hop in the game and play. Yeah, so that must be really nice too for discoverability, because I'm sure there are maybe even a significant majority of players who play this game might not even know what the workshop tab is. So it must still be nice to get that sort of representation in the same way. Or, you know, even if they know what the workshop tab is, maybe they don't know how to get there as easily or something like that. So I was curious as to essentially like how different the experience was when you guys actually got added to the game, especially when you guys get added to competitive matchmaking, where people can now, you know, play for rank and the prestige of that. Do you guys remember anything in particular that was going through your heads as far as, like, you know, jd40 alluded to the map being not in the best state back when it was initially added. So did you guys have a sort of initial hype moment and then, oh shit, we got to fix all this stuff? Or how did that go exactly? Any anecdotes from that era of the map?
Yeah, I think from the start when it was in the game, we constantly were fixing bugs. I think we spent like 1 month or something just fixing bugs, just getting all the feedback, watching the YouTube videos, having people message us and stuff like that. Yeah, and it also hypes you up. Like when it gets to competitive, you just want to improve it. So then you also go back to the draw board for the level design part and just think about how to improve stuff.
Oh, sorry, go on. Sorry, please go on. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. So, I don't know what I was about to say. Oh, yeah, we received stats as well from Valve. So, but I don't think we made a lot of use of that stats. It was more like a feeling, like when you play the map, there's always some stuff that's itching and you just want to change that. Like one example was the old B main entrance. It was just a bit chaotic. Like when you enter the site, there were so many angles you were exposed to. There were so many things you could jump on and stuff like that. And, you know, basically I was trying to fix the problem of CTs having a hard time holding B and then just add a lot of shit for them to play around, which made just one big mess. So that's not the way to do it. So then we decided to go back to Greybox and just rework the whole entrance and make it a good fix in a way.
Very nice. Were there also this was what I want to ask. Like, were there what normally happens with me is like you release a map, you play test like a lot of times, just like you guys did, and then on the first day when it gets released, like people come up with new tactics, like new grenades or anything. And is there anything that stood out, like a really strong grenade or like a smoke or whatever?
Yeah, I think it was mainly the B main entrance. They could basically just smoke off what they could, but
because the small gap on the side of the wall was like intentional, right?
Yeah. But in the other design, you had the entrance right here, and there was the left side. You could smoke it off, and you could basically own the whole bomb site.
Right.
Well, now when you smoke this off, CT still got some space to walk around and change position, so that changed a bit.
Yeah, so were there also like positive accidents, let's say? Like by accident, someone discovered something and you guys were like, oh no, that was totally intentional, which obviously it wasn't. Did everything just work, like for the rest, did everything just worked out as exactly like planned, like in the playtest? Because that's what you want, of course, right?
I think it was quite there was like some boosts and stuff, but they were
Yeah.
not intentional. So like you could boost up here and watch it from there. Boost on this. You can even boost here and watch like somewhere here. I don't know where it was, but there was some crazy stuff people were doing. So for us, it was not intentional. So we clipped some stuff. You could also like boost over here and just watch here for an example. But now there's a clip here to prevent that. So I don't think there were found many things we.
No, nothing stayed. All the things that were like all the boosts were like were excessive. Yeah.
Exactly.
And also like because I I think this was maybe a year before you was working on Anubis. You showed me a map. I think it was called Resistance. It's still in your work. I think it's still in your workshop also. But are you going back to that map or like one of your other levels? Now that you also have like learned a lot from this and the feedback, and I know you're now also working on the Wingman map, but.
Yeah, I think Resistance was a pretty tough project because it basically started as a little scene. Like I made one bomb site, or I just made an area and see how it looks when in a dark setting, you know?
Yeah.
Because that's not useful lighting for CSGO, so I just had to try it out, and then I just liked it, and I just put on different pieces of the puzzle and put them all together, and it was quite tough to make a whole puzzle when you start at just one area. Normally you draw a layout and you got a global vision and then just get the pieces together, but when you do not have that global vision, it's quite hard.
Right, because normally you also start from a paper sketch.
Yeah, exactly. And in this case, I did not, and I think it was fun to get this freedom and just make interesting areas. I think that map became something totally different because of that. Like it's not like really still like most CSGO maps. There's like a lot of open spaces and stuff like that. So I think it's became interesting in a way, but it's also causing a lot of problems. Like I've been playtesting that one a lot, and it still didn't make me happy. And I think I maybe changed too much, and I don't know if I should go back. So I'm like in a bit of a blur right now with that map. So
it's also very exciting to start a new project, right? Sometimes it's easier and more exciting than to dig up something that you already worked on. And you find so many mistakes built up on each other. That's basically easier and faster to just like start from scratch.
Yeah, I think it's not bad to make maps and then bundle them. I know when I started mapping, someone said like it's a waste of time to start all these gray boxes and just start over again and make a new team. I'm like someone who gets like a lot of ideas and I just have to make them. And for me, that's okay because I learn from any map I make and it's fun. I just enjoy doing it. So for me, it's good. And it's also good to finish a map. For sure, you need to know like how the whole process goes and like about optimization and like what the artist will face when you give him the map and stuff like that.
Yes, that's very good. Yeah.
I think it's good to finish map from start to finish. But I mean, for me, my passion is level design, so that's what I do. That's what I like. And I don't know where I was going with my point, but
that's fine.
Yeah.
As far as as long as we're talking up Storm about older maps, I was curious, jd40, if you had any words to say about comparing Anubis to Biome. Now, obviously, you had a different role in this map than you did with Biome. As far as I understand, you were essentially the driving force behind all of Biome. So I'm curious as to what you think about going from one sort of angle in terms of one role of development where you're almost completely in control, and then going into this where you're taking up part of a team in the same way. So did you have any thoughts on how that changed? Obviously, it's not your first rodeo when it comes to being part of a team, but I was curious as to your thoughts on like how you went from Biome to this map, and then essentially how that changed your perspective, if there was any change.
Well, it didn't really change my perspective, but I quite enjoyed doing Anubis because I didn't have to worry about the layout. I just did the art. So yeah, I think doing the layouts is quite stressful because you have to worry about a lot of things like all the sight lines and stuff like that, get the flow and entrances and so on and the timings. But with art, you just kind of put props into the map and it's relaxing.
There you go. I was curious about Biome a little bit more in depth on that map, very briefly, I suppose. But I wanted to ask about essentially how you sort of balanced the need to do the art and the need to place the art like you were talking about, with also designing the level itself. And do you think that a similar process was used in Anubis? If you can compare like how all three of you guys worked together on Anubis, where some of you guys made props and then other times the props were placed and maybe it was a rough draft and then it was defined more. Was that a similar process to what was done with Biome, where you kind of created a gray box, but almost for the art specifically, and then you added more detail? Or how can you walk us through that process? How that changed?
I mean, it was exactly the same process. You basically start with a gray box where you can make changes fast, because it doesn't take much time to just adjust the box. So, I mean, take like a month of gray box, and after that, it's pretty much done. And then you can just do the art. What was the question?
Was just asking about whether or not there was a significant difference between this map's development as far as the art goes and Biome's, because obviously you had to also worry about Biome's art when it comes, or Biome's layout as well as the art. So I was curious if you had a different perspective on that, since you were just saying for Anubis it was almost relaxing in a way compared to having to balance all of those things at the same time for Biome.
Yeah, sometimes on Biome when I was already doing the art and I thought I was done with the layout, I found some big issues. So then I had to like cut into the art and redo those parts. So that wasn't fun. But I think it is similar, because the biggest changes happen when you're in the gray box before you add the art. But yeah, I mean, on Anubis, we didn't really make any big changes, except on B side. Yeah, the big change on B we did, that one was quite painful to do, because we had to move all of the art, and that takes a lot of time.
Jakuza, I'm curious as to your perspective on how the art has taken shape, because you were talking earlier about prototypes and how you sort of had a middle step between gray box and what we see now. So do you have any thoughts on essentially how that was put together? Because you said earlier like jd40 did some surprising things with the props that you put together, and I was curious as to essentially like how much that influenced it, but also what your role is or was in essentially finishing the art, taking it from that middle sort of evolutionary point and getting it all the way into where we see it now.
Yeah, I guess from the beginning, I had a lot of shapes that I wanted to make just to start working with right off the bat, because I was just seeing a lot of the forms and our references that repeat, and like I thought it would just be useful, instead of trying to do those in gray box, I would just make some prototype models that we could throw around. And I had my own ideas for how to use those, and like rules that I was making for how those would be placed in the level. And when JD started using them, he was like much more freeform in the way that he would use the trims that I had made. Like I would make something for the edges of walls, and he would make doorways out of them, stuff like that. And I guess that sort of affected the way that I came back later to them. Like I knew that there would be certain things that because they had taken such a major part of the map that I didn't really expect them to, I needed to spend a little bit more time finalizing them. So the bricks, for example, I didn't really expect the bricks to become such a huge part of the map, but places like this where it's pretty much all you see, I realized that I would need to spend a lot more time making those look unique, or yeah, just making them look very good, because there are actually only 3 variations of this brick, plus a couple of prefab sets like corners and things.
Yeah, so you wanted to make them as generic as possible, so you can like reuse them over the place.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
not having the same crack on every like noticeable crack on every brick.
Yeah, so, yeah, definitely. And I think the fact that everything is made of sandstone actually helps with that a lot.
Yeah, for
because,
sure.
you just don't see the tiling as much when the surface is just so generic and so plain.
What guys? What software do you guys use? Is it also ZBrush or just Blender?
I don't actually use ZBrush. I use Blender for all the sculpting, and then
Okay.
later on, this was before I bought Substance. I was paying for like the subscription, and then I went and remade all the textures in Substance Designer,
Right.
and did my baking in Substance Painter, which was much better than what I was doing before. Yeah, it added a lot in the end.
Because also a lot of people of artists are like switching to Blender, right? I'm still using 3D Max, but I've known quite a few Maya users and also 3D Max users that are like Blender. It's like it has it all. The sculpting part is really good, the unwrapping and everything.
Yeah, I guess it's pretty good for everything, but it's not good at any one thing. And I really do need to pick up ZBrush one of these days and 3ds Max as well, because they're much more specialized for those types of things. I think for a modular workflow, 3ds Max is probably the best software on the market.
Well, especially in combination with the Wallworm plugin.
Definitely.
It's really good. It's basically you can even. I don't do this, but if you want, you can basically like you won't have to touch Hammer anymore. You can do everything in 3D Max.
Yeah.
For me, that's a bit much, but I take parts of the level and then just detail them in 3D Max and then export them as. That works really well for me.
That's a novel idea, because then, obviously, what we couldn't do on this level was say we needed a specific brick, I don't know, with a big crack in it.
Yeah.
You can't make you can obviously make a unique brick, but you're gonna have to bring it back into the 3D package, try to mimic like the geometry of the level, and then get it back into Hammer. So
yes, and with AutoCompile, you kind of merge everything to one model. Sorry, it was called AutoCompile, right? The
Auto Combine, yeah, that's right.
Auto Combine, yeah, and but still all the bricks remain the same when you have one model. But if you do this like in 3D Max or any other software, you make, but you still they reuse every texture, but then you can like you say add variations to the same brick, so to say.
Yeah.
It's what I'm doing right now, by the way. It works really well. I'm also fiddling with. That's why I asked. I'm also fiddling with ZBrush. I bought it a couple months ago, and it's awesome. Like I've also worked in Cave Studios where they used it, and then I saw how they do it. It was like it looks really cool, but at one point I was just like, okay, let's see what it does. Just make the step. I think it was like 800 euros. It's kind of an investment.
Mm-hmm.
But all the updates are free, and it's so also so. I'm not sure who said this, but it's like this is also something very relaxing to do. So if you're like in the middle of level design and you're stuck in your head, and then it's just nice to just like open up ZBrush and start drawing, so to say. It's like start sculpting. It's really
absolutely
nice. For things like this, also with the stones, with all the edges and everything, and like these small details. I'm not sure if you all did this in Blender as well, right? All the normal mapping and everything, because this ZBrush would be great for this. So
let's see, where are you?
I'm at this side on the.
Oh, okay.
On the obelisk.
I did all the sculpting in Blender. Oh yeah, that one too. And that's like there are a couple ways to. Something weird's going on with my Discord. There are a couple ways to like mimic some ZBrush brushes in Blender, and so I tried to do that. And obviously, the like subdivision is not ideal. You can't really get the same kind of super fine detail that you can see with ZBrush, but it's close enough for me.
Right. I'm disconnected from the server. Hold on.
I think you should be able to pop back in anyway.
Yeah.
Just a brief technical mistake, that's all.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
That's just me, or like Discord is also acting weird? Probably me then.
Yeah, I had to click back into it.
Yeah, I just tabbed it back in and it seems to fix, so hopefully it's nothing. Now, Roald, what are the things that I've been interested in? Because I mostly, when I'm doing my own projects, I usually am responsible for like head to toe, right? So I don't have the same kind of, we'll say happenstance when maybe I boot up my map and I see that there's been a bunch of work done on it, and I'm like, oh, this is weird. I didn't do this. Somebody else did. So I don't get that same experience. I'm curious as to if there was any point where you know, maybe your map is in the middle of a gray box and then like suddenly one area is detailed and you just boot it up and check it out. I was curious if that ever had happened at any point in development or something. Was it interesting to see essentially your gray box idea, your sort of mood board and all of those elements be brought to life by Jakuza and jd40? Was there any memorable moments in particular where you thought that they really nailed it in terms of the implementation?
Wait, I didn't got the last part of the question because Discord was basically a little bit.
Oh yeah, so
Could you
the
repeat
question
your
was
last,
just
sentence?
yeah, the question was just that I was curious if there was anything in particular that you thought Yakuza and jd40 did a really good job of, like where it was like as soon as you walk in and you see stuff happen. Oh, we're back, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of it's okay now. So
Okay.
I think it's basically all the work they did. It's just amazing, man. I mean, like I remember when Jakuza showed me the first props, and I was just so happy with him on board. And I was like detailing this area for a bit. It's also on the map core topic where I put all the progress of the work, and that's like an example of his first version of the assets.
That was
Probably
fun.
Jakuza don't want to show it out there, but it's also nice to see the progress of the models and textures, how it
This wall
evolved.
never changed.
But for me, it was really nice to work with them at the beginning, before GD was on board, of course. So it was nice to see things get together, and you know, like especially when jd40 joined us, it was just amazing what he could do with just an area and just how he reuses those props, and just really creative on how you even do that. And like the eye of detail, like for him, he's saying it's relaxing, but for me, it's like I don't even want to think about looking so close to just one area. I'm just more of a global guy, so when they together get so much in detail, it's just amazing to see how beautiful just a simple Krabex can become. And look at it now; it's beautiful.
I'm curious about any specific area that you can think about that was like essentially maybe you weren't necessarily crazy about it. You weren't like, oh, maybe this area isn't going to work, and then they detailed it and it sort of came to life. Was there anything like that where maybe you weren't as happy with an area, but then after the detailing, it really like sold it for you? You really were like, oh yeah, that's great.
There was like a B outside, like B main.
Mm-hmm.
So part of feedback was that it wasn't really owned by either team, so it was kind of a strange area to fight about. So I came with the little elevation for T's, so they get some advantage when CTs push out. But basically, it was quite simple in shape, like all parts of the map, but also this part. And you know, like how you see how jd40 just gets. He makes everything angled, and there's like little things sticking out. There's foliage, and there's all kinds of little details just there. I could never imagine this to look that beautiful at this point.
I'm noticing a lot of organic stuff like foliage and trees and stuff. Anything from Biome got ported over here, jd40? Or was it any experience that you had that made you easily tackle it?
Biome mostly used just stock stuff, but all the foliage we have here is from Jakuza, and it's custom. Maybe he can say more about it.
Well, the palm trees were from Dust 2. I think JD reskinned the palm trees to be a little greener, because I think it just gave it some nice contrast.
Yeah, I think they're more yellow in Dust 2 from what I remember, but
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But the ivy was something I really wanted from the beginning, because it was something that was really present in our reference. And I think we had this one concept image from Assassin's Creed Odyssey that I really loved, and I was playing through that game at the same time. So I really wanted to make things more vibrant as a result. That game was really green as well as sandy and yellow, so I just liked that color combination, and I wanted to bring that in.
Well,
Yeah,
actually,
you guys.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, you guys also did a good job on where to add the foliage, so it's like not becoming like visual noise. so the players blend in with the background, so to say. That's normally like a problem that occurs if you add photos, right?
Definitely.
Whereas in those spots, like you can't see the players that well anymore, and players start to complain like I got shot out of nowhere. So that's really nice as well.
Yeah, I think that's partly because JD did such a good job with the out of bounds areas. That there were so many little nooks and crannies to stick foliage into that you wouldn't have to worry about a player standing against them, I guess.
Yeah, it worked out really well.
I mean, that's a conversation unto itself, because back when this map was in development, this was way before the skins showed up, right? So the agent skins and the custom models.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sure, that, especially since this was eventually added to the game itself, was there any sort of area of development where you guys had to go back to the drawing board as far as a color palette goes, or brighten some area up for improved visibility? Because obviously, this is something Valve themselves did in their own maps, where they started to remove details or simplify elements because of an attempt to make those skins a bit more readable, no matter which combination there were. So did you guys have to do anything like that? Any memories of having to sort of retool an area's art just for the sake of improving visibility?
I think so, because visibility is like a big part of CSGO for like always. So like when you start designing a map, you always have that thing in mind. And of course, like during playtest, there's some areas that are a bit dark, but that doesn't really. It's because of the new skins. It's just in general. So then you light it up. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we ever had a real concern with visibility. Oh, there was this spot. That's right. There was this one. This bridge used to be open. I mean, it was a bridge. Now it's just a closed door. And I guess since that that sight line was so long, I don't know. Roald would know more about this. I had made a whole area back here. I was really disappointed that we couldn't show it anymore.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably the biggest sort of tragedy of simplifying the visuals, is always that there's some nice work that you never get to show off, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Is there also the area that you guys, where it was like really difficult to come to like one opinion? Or is there like still an area where someone says like, no, I would have done it like this? I think that's especially like design wise, it's like a problem most times.
I think the biggest issue, or like the hardest part, was definitely the middle bridge.
Right.
That's an area. It's like when you got the references. There was like one reference with a bridge and a canal. And I really liked that, and I really wanted to put that idea in the map.
Yeah, that was also your first drawing, right, on the map core?
Yeah, exactly. So it was something I wanted to make in the map, like as a part of level design, because it can bring some nice dynamic where you could cross the bridge or just jump down and change tactic. But before, there were no walls on bridge, so it was just one open bridge, and basically when cities pushed B short, they could hit you. When they push A, they could hit you when you cross, and stuff like that. So there was way too much going on, and eventually we ended up with this one gap where you could jump down. But we've been thinking about that as a team together. Like we had some indoor area here where you could drop down into the canal. So it's like a free option for teams to do that. And cities could not use it because it was way too far, way too risky. But then again, some parts of the map changed, the balance changed again. So I decided to remove it and change it back to this kind of structure. But yeah.
I really think personally, I think this is one of the strongest points of the map. Because I always play this area. You can either like watch it across there, or like spam these walls and throw the grenade against the walls to bounce it off. I think I already told you at one point, Roald. It's really cool. It's a really cool spot. So I'm not sure because when you designed it, it was open, right? So I'm not sure who made the decision for like making it spammable, because it's a good one, I think.
I think that just came with the environment art, I think.
Right. Okay.
So it was used.
So that's one of the lucky, happy moments, right? Of incidents.
Yeah, exactly. I think like sometimes people see level design and environment art as two separate things. But I think when you got good teamwork, good communication, I think it's like a way to also improve the level design while doing the art. Like he did some changes in and that just made it the better. So
Yeah, they should complement each other, right? Like the visuals and the design. It's more like a visual. Visually, it can also be a design. Like the more simple thing is of course like an arrow. So that's like visually, but it's also design. It's like or colors, whatever.
Yeah, I think like visual clues to where to go, where to aim.
Yeah.
It also helps on design, and I think it also helps that both of them have a good understanding of CSGO and also the level design part. So there was like nothing really that they did that bothered me in sense of level design. So it was
Great.
like I really appreciated that.
Yeah, that's good. That's also why you're working with one of these guys on a new map, of course.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Now I got a question about a specific arrow in mid underneath the canal. I don't know if anybody wants to go and take a look at that. What's the backstory behind? Is this just to call attention to the fact that a CT could be there if the T's walking down, or because is this a sign that you can boost with enough men? Because this always was a prank to me when I first started playing on this map. I was like, well, what is the arrow there for? Surely I can jump up there or something. But
I think we had like an edge before and like a box here where you could boost or jump on.
okay.
We got rid of that. The arrows, I think, or not the baboon came with the feedback that when you walk here, there's no clue really.
Oh, okay.
Get shot from there. So I think I don't even remember we added this arrow. Honestly, I forgot about it. But I guess it's because of that. Yeah.
Yeah, still a clue that there could be something up there, right?
Yeah.
Is it still possible to get up there? No, with a boost.
I think it is.
If I stand on this crate.
Yeah, there you go.
Cool.
Wow, you can do it with 2 men. First try over here. Check that out.
Did you guys didn't know that, or?
I had no idea.
To be honest, okay.
It's cool to see that there's like sort of like what Catfood asked earlier. There's going to be some people who, even on day one, they find some crazy strategy that you guys didn't necessarily think about. And I heard earlier that there was a lot of clipping that was done to remove certain boosts or stop certain things from happening. Was there anything where you saw a report of some strategy that was not necessarily expected? Maybe something like what we just found out in mid, where you were like, oh, maybe that shouldn't be there. Like maybe we should change that, or was there a situation rather where you saw a strategy that was completely different, that was completely unexpected, and you were like, actually keep that in. That's great. That works out really well. Any memories of something like that?
I'm not so sure. I think like a nice strat was B smokes. Like they could use 2 smokes to smoke off the side.
Yeah, you can split the side in half pretty much.
And stuff like that. But you can see this problem. But I think it's pretty nice, and there's still enough room to counter that probably. So. But you can't really think beforehand about every little detail about the maps. You just design the most basic with your experience you got, and then you playtest and find out more stuff. But there's always more stuff for people to find, and sometimes it's okay,
Now, we do have a couple of questions in the Twitch chat, just so that I can address them real quick. We will be answering questions towards the end of the show, which I think we're approaching pretty soon. So I will be taking note of those. If you have any questions, you can ask them now, and I'll be sure to read them off later on. However, one of my next questions, actually, I want to just sort of go down the list here of asking you guys what your sort of the most proud contribution that you have. Essentially, something that you worked on that you feel like works out really well as far as the map goes, that is essentially the finest work that you did on this map. So I'm going to start with you, jd40. I was curious, anything in particular, any particular area or any particular prop or lighting mode, or any sort of really anything that you did on this map that you're the most proud of?
Yeah, so for me, it's just the whole B-side, and it's the scene that's in the workshop thumbnail. It's like when you stand right here. That's
yes.
That's like my favorite part of the map, with the lighthouse and obelisk and all the stuff.
When this was put together and you were sort of looking at it, and especially afterwards, sort of you've had some time to digest it, and then that screenshot shows up, and that's the default picture for the map. That's what all the people use for their thumbnails on the YouTube videos, right? Was that something that sort of contributed to it? Why it was so? Why you were so proud of it? Like why it was something that you were so appreciative of? The fact that like it was essentially the face of the map in a way, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it was my favorite part since the start. Like we even put it as the thumbnail before anyone else.
Yeah.
So
cool.
I also like this interior shot. the tomb or whatever you wanna call this. I think it also came out pretty nice. With the painted ceiling and the hieroglyphs.
Definitely gives the map a different kind of theme. Certainly
Yeah, I
cements it
mean,
as something distinct.
Yeah,
like
it's also good for callouts, right?
I like the lighting in here.
Don't forget about the MapCore logo. You guys got to find.
Oh yeah, we
Uh,
have
it's in this room.
there's a
Oh, that's
map
right.
Let's see who finds it first.
Good luck.
I've already forgotten.
It's hidden amongst the hieroglyphs.
That has to be on
First sighting.
cheating, no? Oh, yourself or no?
No, I'm just saying that it's the first time anybody referenced MapCore was back in the Egyptian days, you know, and they were detailed.
Oh, like that. It's that old, yeah.
Yeah. Well, while we're searching for that, I'm curious, Roald, since we're going down the list here. Any particular area? It sounds like maybe it'll be mid, so maybe you can give us a couple of them. But any particular area that you think really came out the best out of this map? The part of the area or part of the map that you're the most proud of?
Well, in terms of level design, obviously mid. But I also did some of the map dressing, which I'm not really comfortable with. But I think like the way things are shaped, it's pretty cool. Like this whole area, I did some small stuff from there, and also despawn. So obviously jd40 did a nice pimp over on this area, but I think it was nice to do some environment art as well. But in terms of layout, I think, yeah, I just can't say anything different than the mid-bridge. I mean, there's still stuff I hopefully could improve in the future, but yeah, I don't know.
Are there any plans for an update or no?
Well, I'm still waiting for the stats from Valve.
Okay.
So I want to take a look at that. But there's always stuff itching. Like, for an example, I think this lower B is a bit overpowered for Ts, and mostly because CTs can't really hold a strong angle to counter it. So I want to figure out a way for them to do counter it. I tried some stuff, like putting some area here, but then the Ts entering here would have to face 180-degree angle, so it's a bit too much. It's a bit of a puzzle. So there's still things itching, and also like it's quite tough for T's. It's quite cramped, the entrance, and then when you enter, there's like a lot of area to cover. Like there's many positions T's can be, CTs I mean, and there's not much options for smoke. So I still want to improve A side, so to make it more accessible for T's, and I want to make B more easier for CTs to balance things out a bit. And yeah, that's what's on my mind, but I didn't figure out a way yet to do this on a good way.
Okay.
One of the things that I always look at when I'm, you know, something you said actually earlier, Roald, is that you're never really happy necessarily with anything you make. There's always something you want to try to improve upon. One of the things that I want to say about mid is this is an area where, especially if you factor in the lower mid side where there's that water canal and all that, not only is it aesthetically like very different to anything we have in the map pool right now, but I feel like it also adds a unique element of gameplay where it's like it's uniquely Anubis, right, to play in this area while also still being fitting within Counter-Strike. So it's not going too far off the rails. It's not something that's completely like impossible for people to understand, but it is very much different than everything else that we have. And I was curious, just before we sort of move on, I wanted to get your all of your takes generally on maybe some areas where the Counter-Strike mapping scene can essentially like innovate in a way where they can do something that is uniquely whatever that map is, just the way that mid in here is uniquely Anubis. Is there anything that you feel like maybe it's obviously a very vague question, very nebulous. There's tons of different answers you could take on this, but anything in particular that you think people should experiment with more? Could be like height, verticality, different kinds of angles, different kinds of cover, anything like that you guys might like to see explored just from your own personal bias or perspective?
Yeah, I definitely think there's always a way to experiment with layouts. I think like you should respect the mechanics of CSGO. So like the level design rules, they're like non-written rules. You definitely have to keep in mind. But I think like in this map, elevation is a big part. There's a lot of elevation, and I think it's interesting. It makes areas more unique. And you know, in this particular map, the bridge drop down is a dynamic for both teams. That makes this map quite different and quite less static than like for example Dust 2. So I think there's I think mappers should definitely experiment with it, but it's kind of hard to let players accept maps that are too crazy. But honestly, if I going to design a next 5v5 map, I would definitely experiment some more with this kind of stuff. You know, I was thinking about maybe adding something with a lot of height difference where you could not surf, but just slide down a roof to get a quick rotation or stuff like that. You know, I think it's cool when people use, for an example, a window where you can't jump through, but you can peek through, and you know, just give some dimension to areas, like a second dimension, not just a straight path. Like this is just kind of still. So I'm not really happy with it. But you know, if you would expand this area and give some different angles for players to take. I think you all also talked about that on Marine, and I think that's a good point. I think I just want to get away from the corridory kind of areas, like mid. It's too corridory for me, so I think it's nice to experiment with some more open areas, some off angles to take, but of course keep the CSGO mechanics in mind.
Jakuza, I'm curious about your take on this. And this could be art, this could be level design, anything that you want to sort of touch on. But anything that you think that currently, when you combine the current map pool and also the community maps that we have, anything that you'd like to just see completely turned on its head or done a little bit differently? What's your take?
Oh man, you know, it's embarrassing to admit, but I don't actually play this game a whole lot.
Well, I can actually use that to my advantage for this question then. What do you think CSGO could benefit from other games that you do play? Like you referenced some single player games like the Assassin's Creed game. What do you got for us in there? Anything maybe artistically, maybe something completely distinct, right? Like what's something that you think could be done that would fit within Counter-Strike from your experience working on maps within it, but still be very different, still be very unique?
Well, I think there have been a lot of successful night maps actually, but there are still a lot of color schemes I think that could be explored more because I don't know, we've settled into this kind of habit of making very sunny maps just because they play well, and I wish that there was just a little bit more experimentation there because it feels like people are very quick to tell you you just can't do that. This is CSGO, so you've got to make it extra visible. And I guess we just had the luck of the draw with this one because just the theme happens to fit very well with the play of CSGO. Just the theme itself makes it, and that was not anything that was on purpose actually. Like I never made a conscious decision to make everything the same color. That's just kind of the way I make art, I guess. That's something I'm trying to move away from actually. So yeah, for myself and for others, I guess I think I've seen lately a lot more experimentation with different seasons, different times of day, different color schemes that, I'd like to see more of, I guess.
You got anything to say about this sort of stuff, JD40? Any sort of area where you think maybe there's some rocks that haven't been turned over, some ideas that haven't been fully explored that you'd like to see done differently?
Not visually, really. I mean, I think there's a lot of very nice CSGO maps with interesting themes. And it's almost hard to find a new theme that hasn't been done before.
Yeah.
You did a really good job on Ravine. I really like that. It's really nice.
Yeah.
That's really something new as well. I haven't like actively played it. I've walked through it, but I think it's like the visuals are how you say it's like the visibility is also really good. So like the thing that like most people think that night maps are like have terrible visibility. I think this map proves it can be done as well. I also think on resistance it was pretty good, right, Roald?
Yeah. It's when you think of a night map, it doesn't have to be black, you know. Like for
yeah, exactly, yeah.
resistance, I took like a bluish sky and then a reddish sun. It's going down.
Just ramp up the ambient.
So, and like in Refine, jd40 used a lot of lights to enlighten the playable area.
Yes,
it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, just now thinking, I want to eat my words because thinking on the most recent contest, the Source Engine Wingman contest, I mean, a lot of those maps were extremely unique and like a lot of stuff that we've never seen before. So I think Wingman is definitely a great opportunity for people to try some things that we haven't really seen in the game before.
Yeah, it's like not a full commitment to like a 5v5 map, which a lot of times is like at least twice as big as a normal wing map, right?
Like I think there's always this obligation to attach the word competitive to everyone's layout. Like they don't say I'm developing a 5v5 map. They say I'm developing a competitive 5v5 layout, and I think that really forces people into a certain line of thinking, I guess.
Yeah, I think that the whole wingman map is kind of more of a casual thing right now, and it's also a pretty restrictive game mode because it's just 2 versus 2. There's no rotations, so it's basically an aim duel all over again. So I think to create a fun level for that game mode, you really have to expand some boundaries and just try to be some more creative, try some crazy stuff in terms of level design, but maybe also art. We've seen some cool stuff coming around there, so I think it's a really nice way to experiment with a new game mode and just try some different cool stuff.
Now, jd40, you mentioned earlier that you think that there's been a lot of unique maps lately, and maybe it's even difficult to find a theme that hasn't already been explored. Since you weren't able to come up with anything in particular that is like a unique layout that you haven't seen before that you want to see, were there any recent maps that actually fit that bill of like, oh, here's a map that has a theme that I've always wanted to see in Counter-Strike and it's done well? Any shout outs you want to give for stuff like that?
I mean, obviously, I have to say Engage by Catfood.
Thanks, man.
I mean, it's just a fantastic looking map. I love how they have the moving cars and stuff.
Thanks.
I think that's a really cool touch.
That was also a bit tricky because that's also something a lot of players might find annoying, so to say. Right? They get distracted easily.
If it's the same every round, then I mean it's like the train on overpass.
You get used to it. Yeah, that's also what I thought, man.
Yeah, you probably get used to it. I played this at Engage.
Yeah,
the cars really scared me when I was playing. I was like, "Oh shit, what's up there?"
Yeah. Well, also in the beginning, the shadows were still on. So even if you were looking at the ceiling, you could still see the shadows move. So turn off the shadows. That helps a lot. And but again, I also think this you have to get used to it, right? Yeah.
Now, Jakuza, before we move on to the sort of Q&A section where we answer the Twitch chat's questions, I didn't forget to ask. I am curious about what you think your proudest moments are, your proudest contributions to this particular map, because we took a roundabout way to get there, but I do want to finish strong by asking you, what do you think the best part about your contribution to this map is? What do you think would have never been the same if you hadn't sort of laid your hands on it in the
Well, if you put it that way, no, I mean, one thing that I am just personally really proud of is the Bazaar area, which is like A main, I guess, because that was something that I did really late, and it was kind of like my chance to just do a completely new area, totally open-ended, and in contrast to A site, where I was continually really frustrated just because I felt like I couldn't get things to work or just couldn't get the framing that I wanted because the geometry was already so final. I felt like the Bazaar was kind of the opposite of that. I mean, it's just a simple left turn. And so, I don't know, I felt like I could do whatever I wanted with it. And I didn't do anything special with the layout. I mean, I think it stayed exactly the same. I only changed what's above the layout, I guess. I just wanted to create something that didn't look like the rest of the map, and I feel like I succeeded. I mean, there were it was interesting to me because what I was really impressed by jd40 with was the way he was sort of taking Roald's layout and making his own shape out of that. And that's something that I struggle with a lot more, I think. I am not great at taking someone else's layout and sort of visualizing an entirely different place on top of that. So I don't know. This is one of the areas I guess I feel like I had some success doing that, and so that was a proud moment. And then
also, I really like the lamp that's hanging from the arch, the half arch. It's really cool.
Yeah,
it's a nice detail. I didn't see it before.
I feel like that's almost, yeah. Well, it's okay. I don't know.
I agree.
There's always going to be things that I look back at and think like, maybe I should hop back into Hammer for a second and finish things up. But yeah, I think it came out okay in the end.
That's a nice competition, I guess. Yeah, it's really cool.
I think the difference between you and jd40 is described well, but I don't think it's too bad. I mean, for a level designer perspective, it's pretty nice if artist doesn't change too much. You know, like it could also go the opposite way, the bad way. And I remember the question like, what made you go wow when the gray box turned into art?
Yes.
And I said belong, but I was in my head. I also thought about this part. Definitely, it. I remember you posting it, and I was like amazed, and I still think that way. So I think it's nice, and I like how both of them put all these kind of areas where you can just look just in the back. There's so much depth in this map, so much to explore when you actually pay attention to it. So I think that's a big thumbs up to you guys.
Oh, and I also can't leave out the statue because I am not a character modeler, and
the sitting statue.
Like, the statue here on A site. I mean, we use the head in a couple other places, but that was a total adventure for me because I've never done any sort of sculpting on that level.
No, it's nice.
And it
so they threw you into the deep end. They said, "Yeah, but make this the centerpiece of the bomb site, please." And no pressure.
Hey, that was my decision. I was very proud.
Awesome.
When I came out on the other end of that.
Yeah, this already looks unstable, right? This definitely would go down with a C4.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and actually, very briefly, I'm curious as to like the direction you guys took for deciding what the terrorists themselves are actually bombing. Was there any thought put into that initially? Like, is there some sort of lore, if we can call it that, some backstory, some significance to the areas that are being bombed that you guys, that maybe Roald you had initially the idea for, or Yakuza and jd40 you guys sort of brought to life in that same respect?
Honestly, I've been a bit uncreative with the actual targets on this map. Like, I think it's really nice to use like natural geometry as cover, like pillars and corners of buildings and stuff like that. But here it's just uncreative statue I come up with. But I think it's cool when you use like a train cart or anything that tells a story. But honestly, in this map, it's not really there. It's just an old site, and I guess terrorists hate it. They just want to blow it up.
Yeah, it's old, relics of a bygone era. CTs are just trying to preserve the museum, and those darn terrorists.
Exactly. That's it.
That description on the workshop was something we did, I think, 5 minutes before putting it up.
That's nice. Yeah, and everybody will think it's like, oh, calculated. They have put so much thought and time in it. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for the main segment. We're going to go into Q&A now. So if you got your Qs in the chat, we'll give you your As on the stream. Before we get into anything more targeted with Anubis, I do have a first question here from System CSDK, who says, ask Yakuza about Royal. Now, Royal is a map that's a bit of an older one, but I actually have played it from way back in the day. I think about a year ago or so, I gave it a few runs with some bot games and stuff.
Wow.
And I was actually quite surprised with the architecture, the layout. Particularly, I think it's the A-bomb site that has that whole like circular aspect to it, where as far as the entrances go into. And then I thought that the sort of the way that you go into the buildings themselves is really cool when you're on the approach to mid or on the approach to the B-bomb site. So I'm not sure what this person in particular in Twitch chat was curious about when it comes to Royal. So I'll just sort of fill in for them. Maybe if they're still here, they can ask a more pointed question. But was there any backstory in particular that you thought was interesting for how that map came to be? Can you give us some insight as to how that layout shaped up, or some thoughts on like where that positioned you afterwards, some lessons you learned from working on the map?
I guess one of the most interesting things about that map was that was my first excuse to learn 3D modeling. So there were 2 or 3 custom props for that map that I used just everywhere because I hadn't made anything else.
Were those bricks or no?
No, there were these windows. They
okay.
were really mushy looking, just terrible, like first model type stuff. But yeah, that was really fun. That was pretty much, I think, the first or second layout that I made for CSGO, and honestly for CS in general. I still don't know this game very well, so I was pretty impressed when it actually got far into the contest and into the game eventually, because yeah, that layout did not get a lot of testing. I'm not like the analytical brain that Roald is, so usually when I make a layout, I just make things that seem cool to me. And like the bomb sites were pretty much the first thing that I made for that map. I just threw together like a layout to support those, I guess, because I just like the shapes, and that's how it came together.
Cool. Well, I hope that answered the that person's system. Hold on, I just got to scroll up. What's his name? System CSDK. I hope that answered your question. Now we do have another couple here. We have one from FYORKG. I'm not pronouncing that one. So can you ask what area changed the most from first version to release? I think we asked this more generally, but if there's a specific area, I believe it was like B long or something like that. Was that the area that changed the most, or was there another one that had a lot?
No, I think mostly B. Like when it got in the game, or when it's like released for the contest.
Yeah, I'm assuming that they mean from the very first time that it was released, which was like the contest version that was judged or something like that, compared to what we have now, what we're looking at right now.
Just B main changed a lot, and also the spawns moved. Like D spawned more central now, and the cities spawn up here.
Oh yeah, they used to spawn on the beach almost, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But this was to fix the timings in the new B entrance, so City had some more time to set up, but also keep the equal timings on mid. So yeah.
Now, jd40, you said that the art over on B main was a real pain point because you guys had to like completely reshape it once the changes happened. Were there any other areas where the art changed drastically compared to what we have now, if we look back all the way to the initial version?
I think it was just the B. I mean, that's a big thing. You have to be careful not to art something before it's done.
Yes.
So, you know, I always triple checked with Roald that's finished before I started arting it. Yeah. I mean, when I started doing like B-side, I think Roald was still balancing mid or something like that. So I had to be careful not to do any detailing over there.
Yeah, not to go too far with like the connections between mid and B then, yeah. Because for those who don't know necessarily, like it does sometimes take up to months to finish like the fine-tuned details of stuff. And if you spend a long time on the 3D and 2D details, you're going to be heartbroken if something has to be changed. So I'm sure that was a tough part in the camp. All right, so moving on from there, we have Schizo_V has a couple questions. First of all, he's asking if this map might be added to the competitive map pool instead of Mirage, which I'm wondering if he means like the active duty map pool in terms of the like esports competitive games. Have you guys heard anything about Valve or from professional players who are interested in playing this? Maybe over the previous player break, that some of them might have popped it up, or do you think that they're just like too focused on whatever they're doing for professional tournaments, and they're obviously more focused on learning Vertigo, whatever version of Vertigo is available this month, right? So I'm curious as to what your guys' thoughts are on that, or if you have any predictions as far as the professional scene, whether or not they would adapt to this map.
They don't really tell you anything unless like the point when it happens. So like no one really knows what's going on, and they don't tell anything really.
Yeah, I guess the only history of this happening was probably with FMPwn and Cash, right? Like, was there another completely custom like workshop community map that was put into professional play besides like I think Season was there for a little bit for like ESEA or something very specific, but it wasn't. I think it was just Cash that was a community map, right? If I'm not mistaken, in terms of what was actually added to the active duty map pool for competitive play. So it would be interesting. 'Cause I'm not sure if there is a protocol for Valve to follow, basically.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it doesn't happen a lot, just like you say. And I think the fact that this one got moved to competitive is a positive thing. But you can always hope for the map to be played by professionals, and but I don't think there's a way unless Valve forced them to do that. I hope they do it not just with this map, but just any community map that's coming up, because there's no other way really to get it out there and have it be appreciated by pro teams and more players in general.
Yeah, I think that something to be said too is that, just like we were talking about earlier, where I made the point that maybe there's going to be some people who have never even looked at the workshop, don't even know how to get to it, in terms of the casual viewers. Obviously the pros do, because they have to do that for training maps and stuff, but they've probably never looked at some of the really high end custom maps that are out there that have won contests or that have placed highly in contests that have been added to the game for a more casual experience. Like maybe they've fired it up a couple of times or whatever, but I'm sure a lot of the active duty pros right now would be very impressed with the caliber of work that the community is able to make. Like they might just assume that it's a Valve map initially, which in some ways might even be like the best compliment, even though you'd hope that they would recognize your name at some point. But if they're just like, oh yeah, Valve added this new map, Anubis, and I guess in that situation, if everybody's just assuming it's of Valve quality, you guys knocked that out of the park in a different way. So it might be something to keep an eye out for, but I guess since we don't always have a good communication with Valve and between Valve and members of the community, hard to know for sure if that's going to happen, right?
I think I talked to someone from pro team to get some feedback on this map, and I think they try out some maps and just for fun.
Okay.
They played the Anubis as well, but just obviously what they're saying is like we won't spend any time on it. Because you don't know, there's nothing you do it for. Like they have to train for a map that's in the tournament. Of course, you're gonna play it and test it and whatever, and find tactics and stuff like that. But just for the community maps, there's no reward to it. Like there's no reason for them to play it really.
No, some mappers have the idea of also making. Of course, Valve has to approve this, but doing some map merge where you also have like map coins and everything, and also stickers of maps. Also if you play a map more, then you get like at first you get the silver coin, just the same thing you had with operations, right?
Yeah,
so if you play operation more, you get like a higher skill level with that coin.
I'm not sure if that would really work, because people will be rewarded like just that moment, but when the reward is gone, then they probably lose interest unless they
put in a lot of hours. Like the gold medal is like 10,000 hours. So sorry. What do you say?
I was saying, like, I think a reward is mostly short-term motivation. So you will probably still lose players, but I guess when players get some interest for a map, like play it a lot, get to understand it, they might stick around. But I think having the pro scene play it and see how you can actually play the map and have it be appreciated by pros, I think it would be a nice way for also players to appreciate it and just find their own way in the map and just enjoy it, enjoy the map that also the pros enjoy.
Yeah, I think a big deal is like there are some people out there who watch Counter-Strike more than they play it, or maybe even only watch it and don't play it at all. So getting it into the sort of public consciousness of Counter-Strike players on a more casual level, if they happen to be enthusiasts of esports, they tune in to see, oh, this map's been added to the map pool and now pros are playing on it. Let's see how that evolves, And there's so many interesting storylines that you can get over there too. So certainly a lot to go off of there. But as somebody who keeps a keen eye on the esports side of things for Counter-Strike, I'm definitely hopeful that at some point some of these two different sort of sectors of Counter-Strike will merge, and then I'll be able to I'll come on and I'll be like the most learned analyst of anybody. I'll be able to tell you exactly which team will benefit from this map. Yeah, this style over here, these guys like to play fast and loose. They think this is Dust 2. They're going to be sorely mistaken. Let's just say this other team's got it on lockdown because they know how to play train, and like I could do all sorts of crazy stuff like that. So that's a great end for me personally. If we look at Schizo's other question here, he says, do you think that an unrealistic theme can make it presumably be added to the game in CSGO if the layout itself is strong enough? Now, this is a question that I didn't even know there were thematic restrictions until recently when I was doing my interviews with mappers over on the YouTube channel. And one of the things that was said a few times by a few different people was that like certain layouts are just no-goes, certain themes rather are just no-goes. So if you have like obviously a site of a real-life terrorist attack, they're not going to accept that for drama reasons.
Yeah.
Like, they don't want to cause a sort of PR shitstorm. But there's also the case of potentially having I think there was something related to China, or like they don't want to like anger anybody there, so they don't want you ever bombing anything related to China. Obviously, there's no seemingly very little chance of a large influx or strong uptake for hostage maps as well. So like even just picking that game mode kind of makes it so that you're less likely to be added to the official map or to the official game in any capacity. But then if you also look at like themes that are just completely out of the box. Like if we look at Orion from the Wingman contest recently, where you've got, you actually have zero gravity or low gravity, right? And so on top of that, like they're making gameplay changes on top of it being like a moon-based style thing or whatever the case may be there. So there's some really wild themes out there. Some of the layouts are really strong. Some of the gameplay ideas are really interesting. Question for you guys in your guys' experience. Do you think that something like that, some really wacky maps out there with themes that are not necessarily realistic, not necessarily grounded, not like what we've seen before, do you think that those could succeed?
I think only if you want to do something wacky, you should do it like as if it would be possible in real life. For example, with Trill, you can make like a cartoony world, but it makes sense because it's in a theme park.
Oh, okay.
But I think it has to. As far as I know, there is. I think even like years ago they posted something about like a set of rules. Also, certain locations are off limits. For example, like an airport or train station, right? Because I'm not sure about China though. That's new for me. I haven't heard about that. But
yeah, that might be my misremembering, to be honest. But I vaguely recall somebody mentioning that earlier.
There was a map called Chinatown, but I'm not sure if it was Chinatown in China or it was just like in New York.
Yeah. It's just
yeah.
US, I think. Yeah, but there are definitely restrictions in terms of teams like schools and like just. Like,
schools are also off limits. Yeah.
But I also think like it should be a believable, realistic team in this date of time. So you can't do anything in the future or whatever. But I think you can be smart with it. Like they did Lunacy or what the name is. Like
yeah, that's the map. And it's a movie set instead of
it's a movie set. Yeah. But it looks like it's a moon. So they basically made it work there on that count. But I think Orion also could work. Like it could be a believable place. But then you change the CSGO mechanics, like the gravity and stuff like that. So I don't know. I can look in Valve's head, but I don't think they are really rating for that kind of stuff. I think it might be too big of a experiment. Yeah.
I mean, Swamp was in the game, and that did have a gameplay. I don't want to use the word gimmick, but I can't think of another one.
Yeah, but, I think they actually removed that before, maybe even before it was added. I don't remember if it was actually added to the game. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I think that was a developer's decision. From people I've interviewed, they've said that it was more like the developers decided to remove it. I don't know if that was like because Valve hinted and said, "Hey, we can't add that. We want to add this, but we can't." From what I understand, though, it was more like they maybe just said it was a failed experiment. They wanted to get rid of it. I'm not 100% sure though.
Well, basically, the majority of the playtesters didn't like it.
Yes.
And I've been having close contact with Morozov and told him to get rid of it, and basically, just came with some ideas for how to fix the layout when the mechanic is not there. And
because that was a timing thing as well. Like that was actually a mechanic that they used.
So and I think he talked with Popcas and we played it, and I think at that point or some point they just thought like we go overboard and just redo the whole petting and stuff like that, and that was before it was added to the game.
All right, we got a question that jd40 might be able to answer here. So it's from Kochi. He says, were any part of the map a hassle to art or took a long time to finish? And if yes, what were the ones and what were the reasons for it being so long? Was there anything that you can think of that was a big hassle?
Well, I can think of these arches. They were arches that belonged. They were at an angle, and it was pretty annoying to place the bricks.
So that was just like something that was a time sink. It took a long time to individually.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, because they are they're angled at 45 degrees, so I had to rotate it and then adjust, and it was pretty annoying.
Did you also use instant sync for that or no?
Oh no, they're just props. So.
Oh, that's really brave.
I mean, yeah, you can just copy paste them. They're grouped, so it's fine.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I reused this, I think, at City Spawn. There are also some artists, but these were much easier to do because they're not angled. I mean, other than that, just the bricks generally. There's a lot of them, so like you can look at the floor here. There's a ton of bricks and stuff. So yeah, and the clipping was yeah, it took a long time because of all the bricks. You have to remove the collision from the bricks, but not every time because you still want them to block bullets, but players can get stuck on them. So sometimes you put clips, other times you don't, and so on.
You got anything that comes to mind as far as arting Yakuza? Anything that you think that took more time than it maybe should have?
Oh, yeah, I was in charge of A site, and I don't know. I had mostly, I think, just a problem with being creative on the site, and I don't know why, but the shapes were giving me a lot of trouble for a long time. I remember this area by the T entrance was like a really big pain in the ass, and we actually changed the whole structure of this area, I think, late in the process. Yeah, I think JD, you did all of this because what I had done before that was just I don't know. I was really unhappy with it, so he saved the day. Yeah, there were other parts that came together right away, like the fountains was something that we had pretty much from the beginning. There was no water for a long time, but there were just a lot of like unique parts of this site that I spent a long time getting frustrated about.
The waterfalls that you came up with that yourself, is it from reference? Is it something from that actually exists?
You know, I kept on trying to find references for ancient bathhouses, but
yeah.
I don't know. It was not something that I had a lot of reference for.
That's nice. Really cool.
Yeah, most of the stuff that we had was all ruins, and so this site was supposed to be slightly less ruined,
right?
And that made it a lot more difficult, I guess, for me.
All right.
Cool.
Well, there you go, Kochi. And we got another question from Fyorkg, Fyorkg. Hold on one sec while I reset the Discord here. Looks like Roald's camera dropped.
Oh, the cameras are back. Yeah.
Yeah, that is tight. I didn't disappear.
Yeah, no, he can still hear us. He's going to be a little silent for a moment. But going back to the question here, if you could give your younger self any advice concerning mapping, what advice would you give? Now, Yakuza, I'll start you off here because you just closed us off on that other question. Anything that that you learned, if you had to time machine back and say, all right, listen, kid, I'm going to straighten you out. I'm going to tell you all the things that you need to know. What would it be?
There's not much time. Yeah, I would definitely try to get myself to work in passes. I still have this habit, actually. I have the habit of just trying to do everything at once. And so when I start doing the art, I just start throwing in props. I start making displacements and adding textures, and that can be useful if you are developing the look. But once you have your look, I find that it's way faster and way more efficient to do everything, like a whole area or even the whole map in one go. So you do a pass for displacements, then you do a pass for props, and then you do, for instance, a pass for overlays or small detail props like grass and stuff. And I found that makes me so much faster and really leads to a lot less frustration in the end.
What also really helps for me is that just create a smaller area of the level. For example, if you take bomb site A, just detail bomb site A, as like they also call it like a keyhole. I'm not sure if you know the term. Where you take one area, one small bit of the level from to the max of the detailing.
Yeah, keyhole new to me, but I like that.
Right. Yes, and then you also find out if the modular set works. Of course, if you have like a level with a lot of different areas, then it's different. But for this level, it would be if you all the props that are like in bomb site A, a lot of them are like reused, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So you know from just this area, you know it's going to work in other areas as well. Do we have to wait for Roald and Yakuza?
It looks like JD just dropped.
jd40, sorry.
Yeah, he came back now. So.
Oh, okay. All right. And Roald, is he also here? Or? I see his picture, but
just my video. It's there.
Oh, okay, right. Okay.
All right, so jd40, you got anything that you'd tell your younger self that you learned?
Yeah, definitely. I'd tell myself to learn modeling. I still haven't really learned modeling. I've used Max and Blender, and I can do basic stuff, but not really model something from scratch. It would be pretty good if I could, like, model from high poly and then texture it in Substance or something. I mean, I can still learn that, and I probably will at some point.
So picking up new habits, specifically for doing the art a little bit more efficiently, would be your main sort of lesson then?
Yeah.
All right. Roald, if you can still hear us, Earth to Roald, we're curious. What lessons you learned recently that you'd go back in a time machine and tell yourself?
Way too many. I think the biggest lesson was also on this map that it's good to have like a clear vision of how you want the map to play, because sometimes you can listen too much to the feedback and you're not really listening to the problem. So I think like receiving feedback is also a skill. But for that, I think it's good to have a vision on how you want to play. People give you feedback. It's not always objective. So I think you should really find the objectivity behind that and look at the real problem. Like for an example, in this map, there was feedback that CT couldn't do anything. They couldn't push the sides. They only could hold the side from side. So after that, I made them able to push the sides. But then the next feedback was, CTs can play way too aggressive. You know, it's like contradicting. And I've been going back and forth. Like the map is too big. The map is too small. So I've changed it like a lot, like way too much. But I think it's good to have your own vision and just like really, really listening to what the feedback really means. I think that has been a good lesson. And I think I also learned a bit from jd40 on how he extended the gray box. Like he put all the basic geometry in it first before he goes arting. And I think that's nice because when you got the basic shapes in there, you can again playtest it. And if it doesn't work, you're quite early on with finding out it doesn't work. So you don't have to remove a lot of work. And so I think staying in gray box is something good to do until you're happy with the layout. And other than that, I don't know. I think there are many lessons, but I think it's just good to go out there, just do it, just try it, and when you enjoy it, I think that's the most important thing. So it doesn't matter if things fail or you have to rework them or you have to abandon maps or whatever. For me, it's okay.
All right. We have another pretty large question here from Oliver 3D. He says, we all know, for instance, skin makers are getting better paid than the mappers. Right now, players don't even want to bother learning new maps since they know the maps will only stick around for a few months and usually in scrimmage. How can Valve be better at encouraging community mappers to continue to bother with mapping? Now, the problem here is trying to take this angle is like basically you're asking a hungry man to reach into a canister, a cabinet that's just chock full of food. There's so much food in there, and you're saying, what one food do you want? And he's starving. He wants everything. He wants the whole cabinet. Now that's mappers. When somebody asks, what can Valve do? There's so many things Valve can do, and mappers are starving. They want them to do everything. There's so many things that they want Valve to do. So I guess I'll just ask for one thing from each of you, starting with you, JD40. What do you got here that you think, just one thing Valve could do that in your mind would it help to encourage the map making community?
I mean, I guess they could just do operations again. I don't know why they stopped.
So be a bit more transparent as well. Ideally, I imagine as well. You know, like just try to like
just
say
put maps in. I mean, there's no reason not to. Like they have this going, like the rotation of maps. They could just do it more often, like every 3 months, because these days it doesn't really happen anymore. I mean, Anubis has been in for like 7 months or something. I don't know. They used to do map rotations every 3 months. Now they do it every 4 months, I think. Yeah, I mean, just add more maps. That's my suggestion.
All right. Well, that's everybody's easy answer gone. So, Roald, you got to hit us with a little bit of a different one. Was one thing, aside from what JD just said, that Valve can do to encourage community mappers?
That's a broad question. And a tough one. I think, like right now, there's like 3 areas. You got Valve, you got the professional scene, you got the community mappers, different communities, but it's kind of one thing. Basically, I think like if you look at some of the maps produced by the community that are pretty good out there, like in the contest, it's just a shame that it stays to that point. Like you get the contest, you make a beautiful map, and then there's nothing to happen with it. So I think if it would be nice to get some like detailed feedback from maybe Valve themselves, maybe pro players or something like that, that there's some cooperation between these 3 different areas. So there's actually making use of those maps, because a lot of maps are being unused right now, or just for a few months, and then you never hear and see them again. So I think that's just a big waste. And I think we are really gifted with Anubis being in here for 7 months, but I don't know if it's worth it to work on a new map, honestly. Just besides it's fun to do, but because it's so unsure, like when your map gets added, and what do you have to do to make it be considered at all. Like there's no communication from anyone really, except for your inner circle, which is the map core and storage engine Discord and playtest. So yeah, I think we can make a lot more out of these maps by working together in a way, but I don't know how to realize that. But yeah, that's kind of a dream I have for.
Yeah, a lot has been done on the map, like you mentioned, on the map core Faceit hub. They also have like this tournaments, right? With I think the last one was with wing maps. So it's community wing maps tournament. That's pretty cool. Of course, it's not like an official game. It's still on Faceit, but at least it's something.
Yeah, that's a nice touch, and it also provides you with stats for the map. And
yes, exactly. That's really helpful. Yeah.
So I think that's a really good change. I still think that hub earns more players, like who are interested in community maps and just being nice, because we are all being nice there, guys. Yeah, I think it's a good initiative from the guys and girls out there doing that, but I don't know if it's enough.
Hey, that's what
more is always better.
Yeah, I know this is sort of an uninspired answer, but the Source 2, I really think, I mean, they've shown that they did it with Dota, so I don't see why they can't do it with CSGO. I think it would revitalize everything, especially for mappers, because I'm so done with Source. It's just got years and years of crust built up on it, and as a 3D artist, it's even worse than as a mapper. Because I know level designers love Hammer, but when you're trying to work from an artist perspective, it's really a big pain in the ass. It's not a fun one to work with, especially if you experiment with like Unity or Unreal. You realize really quickly how awful it is for an artist to work with. Yeah.
All right. I see. I thought that JD took the easy answer with just add more maps. You're just saying, yeah, just release Source 2. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
JD, it sounds like I cut you off there earlier. Did you have something to say to what Roald said earlier?
No.
Oh, okay. Just making sure. Just checking in. Okay, so cat food. I wasn't sure if you had anything to weigh in on here as far as an answer to Oliver's question in the chat about what could Valve do. Something that hasn't been said yet. Any ideas coming to mind as far as what Valve could do to make community mappers feel a bit more justified?
For sure, all the things that were just mentioned. Also, I think operation would help a lot. Again, it's also with the coins, right? It encourages people to play the maps, and even if they don't play the map afterwards, at least it attracts players to your map, and it gets a chance, right, to be played. And I also would say like maybe have like a separate a roster with just community maps.
Like a separate map pool.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So. Yeah, and then have like maybe more like have 12 maps, and then see who the most popular map is in there, and then because also then you get more feedback, you can analyze your map more. This is also great from the MapCore Faceit hub, where with each playtest you get like a demo, and there's like a heat map of where all the players camp a lot and stuff like this. Is really useful, and because even if you playtest a lot during development. You can't playtest so much that you can predict 10,000 of people how they're going to play, right? There's also always going to things are going to show up, and so I think it would be really useful if you had more time to tweak the map, and then also because this is something I noticed. This was with Ruby, one of my maps I got it through operation. At first, a lot of people there there was like one. It was basically too big. People thought the map was too big, so I changed it. It took me like a week, but people are like they saw it the first time and still think it's too big, and they kind of miss out on the update, and they don't give it like another shot with a fresh where they're kind of think, okay, this is like almost like a new map. Let's try it again, and that's something you miss. But again, that's also like CSGO players somehow are like super stubborn. They want to. Yeah, this is also really cool about Anubis because of course it's like there's some in the layout also you can like it's really easy to recognize, but there's also some new things in there, especially the drop on mid. I haven't seen something like this. At first it really looks like complicated, and then you get like two 3 rounds, and it's like super easy. So I think maybe also like I think this is a good step like. That the map is now longer into the game. I also hope you guys got like a lot of information you can use on the next maps you're gonna make, right?
Yeah, so I would say.
Basically keep the maps in longer somehow,
yes.
So you have more time to fix things.
Providing mappers with useful information is a big deal.
Yeah.
Like one of the things that I think a lot of people miss about the whole argument about whether or not Valve should be like adding maps or being more transparent about maps is. If there's no sustainability, if there's no opportunity to understand where this is going to go long term, then you are going to miss out on some of the people that could be the most dedicated, the people that could be the most talented, the people that could spend a long time in your game working on maps. Essentially the people who would become, in a sense, not really like contractors or employees or anything like that, but in a way they're making content for your game, right? So if I'm Valve and people are making content for a game that I made, then in a sense, like they are extending the longevity of my game itself. So I almost have this, in my opinion, there would be this built-in understanding that what you should be doing under those circumstances is providing them with a path, maybe some sort of commentary, some sort of transparency on what you think the path to like further down the line to more stability in the mapping environment is. And there needs to be a bit more, I think, transparency in general. So I know it's like another one of those tired answers that everybody said before. We need Valve to be more honest or open or transparent with us instead of like essentially just being a black box that nobody knows what's going on inside. But specifically when it comes to mappers, I think there needs to be a dialogue where people can decide like if Valve takes this approach versus a different approach, how would that affect me? And we could talk to Valve and voice our opinions as you know, the mappers can go to them, the 3D artists can go to them. I think another thing that Yakuza brought up is the fact that like the tools that they're working with are just not up to par with what is available in other software. And people are just gonna, I mean, as much as people enjoy Counter-Strike, as much as people enjoy Hammer, if it continues to be like that for a long enough time, especially if there's no other thing that's saying, hey, here's some advantages of working within Counter-Strike. Here's some stuff where you can guarantee, like, if your map is good enough, then you're going to get added into the game for this amount of time. This is the kind of payment scheme we're offering. This is how you can, like, sort of get given back to by the community in that sense for your efforts. If there's no transparency in that regard, and the tools are not fun to use, if it's not a joy to work on the content, then people are just going to leave for Unreal. People are just going to say, screw this. I'm going to go to an editor that is actually, like, supports modern workflows and pipelines where I can do everything that I actually want to do or need to do in a much easier way. And at that point, like, I can just make my own content, in theory, be part of my own games development team. Like, there's so many more upsides to that if you're willing to do it, where there's doesn't seem to be that much competition from Valve and from the Valve community in terms of, like, how they are able to essentially, like, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar kind of deal. Like, there's no real honey here. It's all vinegar. It's all stinging our eyes. We can't get it out. Like we said earlier. It's small doses though, right? Like,
you're right.
It's just there's, like, so many downsides, and the upside is we have a great game that's fundamentally sound. CSGO's probably got the best tack shooter gameplay in terms of an FPS. Especially a tactical FPS, like, it's up there in terms of gameplay, and yet I feel like there's so little in terms of, like, outside of what the gameplay has to offer and what you can explore within the community and the support structure of the community itself. Like, from Valve's perspective, what are they giving us? It doesn't feel like a lot. So I would just say that I would say Valve needs to be more, like, open with dialogues so that they can get to figure out what the pain points of mappers are currently. How can they entice them to stick with the working with the map itself? Because if the work is good, if working, the process of working, just the act of making a map or making art for a map, if that becomes more joyous and just less limited, and you have to worry about less things when it comes to a technical sense, where you don't need as much, like, trivia bouncing around in your head of, if this problem happens, I have to do X, but if this other problem happens, I have to also do Y, and I've got to balance all this stuff. Like, in some cases, it's almost beyond the responsibility of what a technical artist might need to know. Like, realistically speaking, are they supposed to know all of the different things that might be going wrong with the texture? Like, there was something in the recent cache rework by FMPone where there was just some golden trim that was causing FPS loss when you walk into Z. Nobody knew what the fuck was going on. At some point, somewhere down the line, like, removed this and said, oh, that's what it was. Like, why would you need to know that as a mapper, especially an environment artist? Like, how are you going to know that it was just some trim? You know what I mean? So, like, stuff like that, I'm sure there's, like, a more in-depth explanation. Again, disclaimer, not a mapper myself in CSGO, so there's going to be some oversimplification there, but I think the fact that Valve doesn't have an open dialogue, doesn't really understand what the pain points are of working within their own engine in terms of, like, what other community mappers have. And maybe they don't have, like, they aren't giving out enough guides for working within the editor themselves, or, like, tips or tricks. Like, even if you have all of this trivia that you have to learn, if Valve at least gave it to you, if Valve at least said, oh yeah, if this happens, then do that. If there's a guide or reference sheet you could look at, that would be useful, even though it's not fixing the root problem. At least it's spreading information. And it feels like they just don't do any of that. So I don't know if you guys have any ideas on that. I think that'll probably be our last question here anyway, but figured I would just say my piece. Because from my perspective as somebody who doesn't do the mapping themselves, it just feels like the mappers who are creating all these maps that I personally enjoy playing, I play more custom maps than I do official maps, and I know that I'm a minority in that respect. But the fact that they never get any dialogue from Valve about, like, how their engine can be improved, what bugs in their game engine can be taken care of, and all that stuff. Like, obviously Zool's somebody else who's, like, fixed a bunch of problems with the game and with, like, animations and with code. Like, he's actually fixed a bunch of this stuff, but none of that seems to be surfacing in the game itself. So, like, these are other, obviously we could go on massive different tangents, but that's my piece. I don't know if anybody has any response to that.
Well, one thing I would say is, which is really funny about CSGO in particular, is that it's almost like a captive modding scene, because there aren't really alternatives to CSGO if you want such a popular game. If you want to make maps for a really popular FPS, I mean, CSGO is among your only options. And though other games come out with modding kits, they have a really tough time attracting people, just because you need some sort of momentum behind the game to get that modding scene going in the first place. And CS has had a modding scene forever. So it is a little bit strange, because, yeah, as much as I like to complain about it, there is nothing really you can compare to CSGO in terms of, just the potential to see your 3D art become a part of the game as a total amateur. which is really exciting. I mean, there's some magic to it too. It's just, yeah, upsides and downsides, I guess.
Well, there you go. I don't know if you had anything to say on that whole subject, Cat Food. I know it's a big one. Valve talking to mappers.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they released. I said this earlier, but they released like this message like a couple of years ago, where there were some rules where the map has to apply to become like able to become into make it possible for the map to become in game.
Yeah, thematic restrictions, right? Like certain things
yeah.
you can't do.
Yeah, and there, of course there's like the wiki where there's like a lot of information on Hammer. Or like the actual tools, they don't really use update it. Like there's an update every once in a while, and I think the last thing they update was maybe scaling from props. That was great, by the way. But yeah, and even just saying that, like that there wasn't like an option to scale props is weird. You have to go into for you. It's like because you're not a level designer, you have to go into a text file. And then changes a couple of numbers to change the scale of a prop in the level editor. That was really weird. So
I can't believe that's actually how they had to do it. That's so crazy.
But they're updating, but it's like a little bit more transparency couldn't hurt, I guess. But also I don't know, they're probably busy. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Everyone's talking about it.
Any sort of final words on this subject before we close things out for this show? I think it's been a bit on the longer side, but I actually really enjoyed it. So I hope you guys had a good time.
Definitely.
Yeah, sure, for sure.
Roald, any ideas here you want to leave us with?
No, I'm not the technical guy. I got no thoughts on that.
All right. Any final words, JD?
No.
All right. I think that'll do it for our stream then. Thanks everybody who popped in and said hi and said stuff in the chat and asked us questions. Basically just free content for me. I just get to pretend to change the question and these guys answer it. So it was pretty easy. But yeah, that's about it. Thanks everybody who joined. Thank you, JD. Thank you, Roald. Thank you, Yakuza, for popping in and giving us a little insight into Anubis' creation. It's been a real pleasure, and I definitely want to do this again with some other people. So I think that'll pretty much do it. We'll see you guys again very soon.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks, guys. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Cheers.